welcome back to my little creative corner here in Cumbria in the UK. My name is Emma. If you haven't found me before, this is where I hang out and do some fun things with fabric and stitch. I've been doing this for about 4 years now, which is quite extraordinary. I started with my little phone and now I have a nice camera, and I somehow find something to talk about every week and some kind of making to do over each week, and it's just wonderful to have you here. New people, old people, you're all very welcome here. New friends, old friends, it's just great to have you here. And I know you've all got creative souls, and whatever you're doing, thank you for your comments, thank you for your thumbs up, thank you for your subscriptions. The more people join us here, the better, because it's just a bit of fun. It's meant to be relaxing, it's meant to be just playtime, that's all it's about. My life more and more is about letting go of control, and I think it's very much that in my work. So we've been playing around with some of these fabrics last week and the week before that, whatever. I think we're on week 3 now. So this week we're really going to get to grips with this, and I'll show you what we're going to get up to in a little while. But I just wanted to say thank you for being here. It's just lovely to share this space with you. I love to think of you in your creative little corners, whatever you're doing and wherever you are. Let me know, leave me a little comment down below. It really makes my day when I connect with you like this and we share a moment together. It's just great. I have lovely times with my friends. I go out and I do textiles with other people, which is really lovely, and I think you can't beat that. Just chatting about fabrics, chatting about stitch. There's no big deal about it, is there? It's just textiles, and it's in everybody's life. We all wear clothes, we all have, furnishings and curtains and stuff. To me, textiles is so approachable because it's where we all are, and it's just brilliant. So I hope you've been having some nice weather. We've had just wonderful time. We've had a few days of glorious, warm sunshine. It's September, it's what it does. Sometimes I'm quite pleased when the official summer is over, because sometimes we get these really lovely days at this sort of back end time and everything's a bit more peaceful. It's a shame because people are back at school and back at work, but I'm just making the most of it. I've got deck chairs in the garden, I've got ice creams in the freezer, and I'm wearing t-shirts and shorts if it's appropriate. And I'm also getting lots of outside jobs done ready for the winter. I'm always pleased to get my windows painted. Isn't that sad? Once a year, ladies and gentlemen, I go around the house and I wash the windows, especially downstairs. The upstairs ones probably don't get done really so much, but I wash them and I give them a treat, and I clean all the spiders out of them, and I put some paint on where they need some paint. It's really a great satisfaction to get something like that done, isn't it? These nitty-gritty jobs that just need doing, and the weather's just allowing me to do it so easily, and it's a pleasure to do. I'm just going around. Sometimes I have a podcast on my phone to listen to. Otherwise, I'm just listening to the birds and what's going on around me, and it's a pleasure to do. And I'm very grateful that I've got the health and well-being to do these jobs. Sometimes they can feel like a chore, but I just think I do them one at a time and they get done by magic. And then I feel really good, and I give myself a pat on the back. So let's get on with this. I was chopping up lots of fabric last week, and this time we're going to get on with actually playing around with this soluble paper stuff. So this is now what it's looking like. It's full of tingles and tangles, and I've just added lots of little bits of yarn, some of this lovely grey yarn that I had. But I'm making sure each little bit sort of disappears under another little bit. So if I put a piece like that on, I make sure it's got some lacy bits to sort of hide away in amongst, so it's not just a straight piece of yarn. And I've got some of this, I don't know if you can see that. So I've got some of this as well, which is kind of a bit two-tone, but it's nice, got a nice crinkle to it. So again, I'm just chopping, chop a little bit of this, and I'm just adding little bits on here and there. I'm trying not to make it uniform so that each area's just got its own identity. And then of course I've got these delicious threads, which I'm just going to sort of, Mrs. has gone, I'm just cutting these up. Oops. Everything's so loose on this surface that anything that catches on it is just going to pull it away. So I've got these gorgeous little threads, and I'm just putting them on top like that. You know, like when you put, I don't know, things when you're doing cake decorating or something and you just add things on. I just love that you can just put this on and it doesn't matter where you put it. It doesn't matter what angles they go at. It's just adding something into the mix. And I have to say, as a therapy, this has just been so lovely to do because nothing matters. Doesn't matter where it goes. I'm not controlling any of it. I'm just putting it down and saying, there you go. Isn't that fab? It's just delicious. And I have to say, at this stage, I have absolutely no idea where seed heads are going to come into it at this moment in time. But that's what inspired me to get going, was the thought of seed heads. That's the thing, and it got me going, and that's all that matters. It doesn't matter what it is that inspires you to get going. It's a journey then. You just let that seed grow and change and develop, and it might not become, the acorn might not become the oak tree, it might become something completely different that you had no idea was going to happen. So I've basically I'm using lots of scraps up here, and I'm going to use lots of scraps of paper as well. The thing about this stuff is it doesn't really matter how you layer it up, it's going to get dissolved away. So you can make it as thick or as thin as you like. Obviously the thicker you make it and the more stitching you do, the more it's going to sort of stay on the fabric, if you like. But I just thought I would try and use up all my bits, all my scraps, rather than, you know, just having a brand new piece. So I'm just kind of, oops, I'm trying really hard. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start pinning, because otherwise I'm just concerned that all this topping is going to get moved. You know, this is quite vulnerable. It could just all blow off. If there was a stiff breeze, it could all just blow off. There we go, we're going to put that on top of there. Once it's pinned in place, it's kind of safe. You know, as long as I pin it plenty. That bit would fit there quite nicely, I think. And I'm just going to make sure I pin it all really well on. I'm quite excited about this. This is a bit like, I imagine, what it's like when you do ceramics, in that I'm going to do a process here where I'm not going to really control the outcome. I'm going to stitch all of this down to try and hold it in place as much as possible, because I don't want it all falling off. You've obviously got to hold it in place, because it will all just fall off if you don't stitch it. So I'm going to stitch it down, and then we will see how it hangs out. When we stitch it, we dissolve away the paper. Let's cut that open. Dissolve away the paper. I don't know if you've ever used this stuff. I don't know whether you have. If you have, let me know in the comments, please, and what you've done with it, because I love this stuff. I don't use soluble fabric so much these days, and I actually haven't done soluble paper for a very long time, quite a while. And it's really versatile. I love what it does is it leaves little bits of the paper, depending on how much you solubilize it, how much you dissolve it away. If you do it quite gently, you can keep quite a lot of the paper in the fabric of your base, as it were. So you'll see it'll become more clear as we get further down the track and we dissolve things away. But you do have to do quite a bit of stitching, as you do with anything that's a soluble sort of surface, because you've got to hold, it's got to be held somehow, hasn't it? Oops. I mean, you could be, I suppose you could be putting Bondaweb or something on top of this, or Misty Fuse or something like that. A really light sort of Bondawebby sort of fabric could go on top. As I said last week, you could be perhaps embellishing all of those pieces down. But I'm choosing to do this because it's a bit crazy, a bit reckless, a bit uncertain. I'm not going to be in control of it, and I like that as an idea. So I'll pin the rest down, and then we'll do some free machine embroidery onto it. Okay, so I'm set up here for free machine embroidery. I've got my sort of sandwich of all the fabrics with the paper on top. Obviously I'm going to be stitching paper, so that might blunt my needle a little bit. I need to keep an eye on that and maybe change the needle after I've done the stitching on the paper, but we'll see how it goes. If you haven't done free machine embroidery before, there's a little beginners playlist that I've got on my YouTube channel, and you just go and look at the free machine embroidery beginners. It'll give you some ideas of how to get going. Basically, you've got an embroidery foot here or a darning foot. You lower your feet, dog teeth if you can. I often alter my top tension a little bit so it's a little bit less tense, as it were, a bit less tense, but that's entirely dependent on your machine. Don't start fiddling with that unless you have a problem. I just find that works best for me. And of course you must put your presser foot down, because otherwise nothing will work. And turn your machine on, and then off we go. I'm just going to do random stitching, because I have no idea what's underneath here, but I've got to do enough stitching obviously to hold everything on. And I'm going to take it very steady. You can hear the machine is poking holes in the paper, and I'm just going to take it very steady. I'm not going to stitch fast. It will take a little while, but you know what? It's quite a nice thing to do, really. I shall put some music on in a minute and just let it all go. As you can see, it's going to take me a little while, so I'll come back to you when I've got this finished. Okay, so this is what it looks like now. You can hear the paper, and I've actually stitched a couple of extra bits with some wool underneath. I don't know if you can see, I've got some wool underneath there that I've kind of stitched with a zigzag stitch, and we'll see what that looks like when we solubilize it, when we run it under some water. So this is the other side, that's all the stitching that I've done. We're just experimenting, we're going to see what it's going to turn out like. I'm going to go down now and I'm going to get it wet and wash off as much of the paper as I think I want to wash off. Okay, so this is what it looks like. Now it's all wet and pulpy. All the, you know, if you've ever made handmade paper, basically this is covered in paper pulp. But where it's stitched, it will stick to the fabric. It'll sort of stay. And as I say, I can't control how that happens, but it's rather fun. You can see there's bits of yarn sticking through, bits of lace sticking through. Depending on how much you wash it and how much you run the tap as to what exactly happens. So I'm going to let this dry and then we'll see. You can always take more off. It's better to take less off, I always think, and see what it looks like, and then you can always run the tap and take a little bit more off. I've actually mostly just soaked this in a bowl, to be honest, and let the water run a little bit. You have to run your tap quite gently, otherwise it all gets washed off. But I love it because I don't know exactly how it's going to turn out. So we'll let it dry and we'll see. Okay, so this is now dry, and it feels really strange because on the front, I don't know if you can hear that, that's very papery, and on the back it's just the smooth softness of the curtain interlining. You can see my edge there, that's actually neatened itself quite nicely. I didn't do that at all, and the other edges have got little bits hanging over, which I really like. So you can see how much the paper has stuck to the background. Because I did quite a lot of stitching, if I just show you, that's sort of the amount of stitching that I did. So I just did enough to hold it in place, but it's amazing how the paper is quite sticky, and I didn't wash it off very much. The more water you run through it, and the sort of the faster the water you put across the surface, the more the paper will disappear. So if you wanted to get rid of more of the paper here, you could wet it again, and you can scrape, I mean you can actually scrape some of it away with your finger now, or you could possibly sand it or something. But also, as I say, you can wet it and then just move the pulp away with your finger and get as much as you want. But it's useful, I think, when you're dealing with soluble paper, is you have a little look at it and see if that's as much as you want, rather than deluging it in water and losing it all. So I'm just going to work with this as it is. I think I don't really want to fiddle around with it. I'm happy to let go of the control and just let this show up. You can see here the extra bits that I put on, the straight bits of wool, have sort of come through. I didn't wash them off too much, and it's possible that you might want to do some more. You might want to add some more of those, and you might want to add some with some paper on top like I did with these. The ones at this end haven't shown up quite so well. If I just show you on the back, you can actually see these are the zigzag lines that I stitched to hold those in place. So this is all been an experiment to see what was going to happen. I have to say, if you're going to play around with soluble paper and you use something thick like this, it will take quite a while to dry. I've got a nice warm kitchen, so I just kept it in the kitchen for a few days, and maybe next time actually what I would do is use something thinner for the back. It doesn't really matter what you use as the back fabric, to be honest. I just felt like using that, so I did. It was cotton curtain interlining, as I'm sure you remember. Yeah, so this is just all playing around and seeing what happens. So you can see I've got some nice little bits that are sticking out, and as I say, you could be taking some of the paper pulp off and exposing more of those. So we'll see if I want to do that or not, actually. And then the next question is, what kind of seed heads am I going to put on this? I think this background is so sort of busy, we're going to want something fairly simple and dramatic. The question of the scale of things. So I have these little drawings that I use from time to time. They're quite helpful. I may or may not use this kind of seed head. I might do a mixture of things to add in to the general mix of the background, but you could be doing something very simple with some umbels, you know, just adding them into the background and letting these come forward. You could be adding these on and then adding more paper on top so that these kind of mingle into the background as well. These don't have to stand out as much as you think. They can have some paper put on top and you stitch them and see what happens. You know, that's the game. It's all play around and see what happens. So I'm just going to look now at, see, these are my neutrals. These are what I've got in the background, and I think to do something in a neutral, say something like this, if I added some more of those on, that would be quite nice. That would keep it very neutral, so we could be using very subtle tones like that. Or I can be adding something a little bit stronger with this sort of goldeny colour. And I'm just really using these just to show you. But you see, you could be zigzagging something like this. This is a chenille yarn. You know, you could be putting this on and zigzagging it on. I quite like that because it's not fighting too much with the background. I've also got a bit of this old yarn as well, which again is something in a similar tone, which could be added into the mix. It's all just playing around and seeing what might or might not happen. And then I've got other colours. I've got this grey, and I don't think I like that. I do quite like that golden colour because that's kind of the colour that you get, isn't it, in the hedgerows at the moment. There's a lot of goldeny colours, but there's also possibility of putting in some darker tones, some really dark dramatic tones. This is the piece of yarn I had out originally. I love it because it's the sort of the colour of the dock seeds. So you could be adding this in and you could be adding this in. You see, we could be doing something tonal like that, or we could be going, you know, into a purpley colour as well. Oh, look at those colours going together. I rather like that as a mix. I don't quite know how much contrast to make with the background. I'm not quite sure at this stage. So let me know, you know, would you stick to the sort of softer tones and keep it all quite subtle, because we could be adding those in together with a bit of, perhaps with a bit of grey could go in, so we could be keeping it in those softer colours, or we can be going for a bit of drama with these sort of shades, these lovely dark things going on. Which would you go for, or do we do a mix? Please let me know in the comments what you think. What would you do? How would you handle this bit? Because I don't know yet. Until I start playing around with the yarns, I don't really know what's going to happen. I've got to get used to this background, which is really lovely. I really love it as a background. As I say, I might do a little bit of removal of some of the paper. I keep changing my mind, don't I? I'm really hopeless. One minute I'm saying no, I'm not going to touch it, and then I'm thinking, well, actually I might just take a little bit of you could even take a nail brush to it with a bit of wet and just pull a bit off. I might have a play with that and see what happens. So, but please let me know in the comments, you know, would you add the lighter tones on? Would you add the darker tones, or perhaps a mixture of the two? Let me know, and we will come back to this next week and we'll see what's going to happen. I'm so excited to show you it. I hope you've enjoyed the process so far, and this might inspire you to have a go with some soluble paper and mixing it with the, you know, your usual textiles that you use. It can add so much drama. It can add so much, you know, something very interesting happens when you use soluble paper. So I think that's all for me from this week. I will see you again very soon and we'll see what's going to happen next. The adventure continues. Bye for now.